Hello. Today we are looking at how to write an effective summary, and also we are going to look at avoiding plagiarism. Avoiding plagiarism is something we've touched on since the very beginning of our class. We've connected this even to our syllabus and our core values where we talk about integrity. Today we're going to connect it with your writing, and in particular this week's lesson, which is writing a summary. So you might think to yourself, oh, that's so easy, writing a summary is nothing, we do that all of the time. But there's really some things that I would like you to keep in mind to grow yourself academically as you write the summary for this week's assignment. So let's hop right in. Just a note that this PowerPoint will be provided to you as well. So first of all, let's look at what is a summary. So a summary is essentially a condensed version of a larger set of text. However, sometimes what I find is people just copy and paste information, and that's actually not a summary. A summary is not taking the information and just making it shorter. There's also some things you have to do. So you'll see here that it says a summary condenses a larger text by capturing the main ideas using your own words. So how do you use your own words without changing the meaning of what was written? Now that can be scary sometimes because when we put things in our own words, we might tend to change the spirit of the message. So summarizing shows that you've comprehended information, and it also helps you as you learn to synthesize and integrate information, which is a very common job skill that you'll use multiple times a day, many times a week throughout your career. The connection to plagiarism is that essentially when you're summarizing, you're not copying and pasting or letting AI do the work for you. And we'll dig into this a little bit more. But you'll see here that proper summarizing helps you avoid plagiarism by ensuring that you're rephrasing and you're not just rephrasing the content, but you're supporting the argument with evidence. So here's a couple of points about why summarizing matters. And I'll tell you that I don't know hardly at any point in time in my life that I can't think of a time or place in any position that I've been in professionally where I haven't had to summarize information or have people summarize it for me. And this is actually a skill that a lot of people could grow in because, again, they could change the meaning when they summarize. Or I even had my boss say to a group of people the other day that he wanted a summary basically to take and condense some information, and he told everybody, please do not use AI. I want to see your own words because AI is a tool. One of the AI tools out there is called Copilot, and it's Copilot for a reason, not the pilot. So how do we use those tools appropriately? You'll see that I previously provided you a little flow chart of when it's appropriate and some questions to ask yourself about using AI. I would encourage you to go back and look at that tool. In fact, I'll drop that again for you if that helps, talking about the visual for the appropriate use of AI. But it's important here, I'm sure you're reading with me, I'm not going to just read to you about why summarizing matters. So as I mentioned, it does help you demonstrate comprehension. It supports the argument flow, right? If you are trying to advocate for something or maybe against something, it helps you flow the information in a way that's either to the reader or the person who's listening so that they can comprehend and understand and maybe not tune out if you go too long-winded. It definitely prevents plagiarism because we don't want to do that, right? And it also enhances your analytical skills. So proper summarizing is again, like I said, a job skill, both as the deliverer of information, but also as the receiver of information. So for example, if you were in a leadership position, it would be important for you to be able to recognize strong, reliable, valid summaries that are evidence-driven and not be swayed by inaccurate information. So summarizing skills matter both as the sender and receiver of that information. And this doesn't always have to be in written paper format, right? We're practicing in a written paper format. However, this could be emails, white papers, presentations. There's all types of, you could even be texting someone, right? There's all types of information flow in our professional world. And so obviously we practice underneath the umbrella of formal written reports, but these skills will translate to other professional types of communication. So, how are you going to do this successfully? Because we've spoken about now why it matters and how you might use those skills in the real world. But let's give you some actual strategies. So, here's 3 steps to summarizing that you can follow. I'll give you a moment to review that. And while you're reading that, I'm just going to grab a power cord. Okay, thank you for your patience. So you can see here that you're understanding the original text, writing in your own words, and you're going to review the summary for accuracy because self-checking is very important. So always leave your self-time to self-check. Paraphrasing. What is that? What's the art of paraphrasing? How do I know if I'm paraphrasing appropriately? And what is paraphrasing? Well, essentially, paraphrasing is rewording. It says there at the top, you're rewording with meaning. So you can see here that you're actually changing the structure and style. This is one of the key things that I think people forget. And as you write even discussion boards, not only just papers, but those discussion board posts, style, structure, tone, inflection, so the feeling or the emotion that's associated with writing, all of that comes through, and you can kind of tell if it's say a student's tone and structure and style versus something that's academic and written by, say, a researcher or AI. So this is why it's important for you to write, because even though you might feel like you're writing the same information, you're writing it in your quote-unquote own words. And then you can see here 2 more strategies about avoiding copying and pasting, and also how you can practice. So I'm just giving you a minute to look at that. You might even pull this up as a visual or print out maybe a couple of these slides, and you could self-check yourself as you go through like say you wrote a summary, then you could go back and you could just kind of self-check yourself using this as kind of a self-reflection. So copying text without the proper rewriting does show your lack of understanding, and that's why it matters, and it also results in plagiarism. So you must rewrite. You can use plagiarism checkers. All the schools nowadays have plagiarism checkers. It looks for flags for things like AI and other unethical writing practices. You can use, there's a lot of free open source things on the internet that you can use to check your own work. And then obviously, here it says you have to build those skills. So these skills build over time. No one expects you to say, I want to summarize greatly or, proficiently, and then able to master it the first time. This is a skill that develops over time, which is why there's the importance of writing and getting feedback and then writing again. So here's some examples of summarizing. And you can see here the poor summary. These are the plagiarism risk, the lack of understanding, and of course, if you replicate the original text. So just giving you a minute to look at that. That might be one of those slides there to print out to use to self-check your work. And here's the original text with a good summary. So this is the positive outcome, right? So let's just talk a little bit about the ethical use of sources, right? So how are we even going to use these sources? And this is going to lead into a conversation about something called unintentional plagiarism. So there is an importance of citing work, and we are using the MLA citation style. I've given you plenty of guidance on that at this point. But the failure to not cite could result in professors giving you a 0. It could result in you going in front of a disciplinary hearing. And it's really just, if you go back to those core values of integrity, it's just about doing the right thing. So you wouldn't want to write something that somebody else wrote and not give them credit. People work very hard in this world to get their information and research published. And so citing appropriately ensures that you've given credit to that person or persons that's written the work. If you do not cite and you just forgot or didn't understand how to, it's still plagiarism. The intent doesn't really matter. The plagiarism is not citing. It's plagiarism is if you don't cite, you don't put your references at the end of your work, and it doesn't matter if you meant to or didn't mean to. So that's what unintentional plagiarism is. So learning how to cite and when to cite is extremely important. And I've given you some resources on that. So hopefully you'll really dig into that and explore and educate yourself as you go to write papers. Of course, what we're doing is a little what I would call minimal in the amount of exposure to these skills, but you'll see these skills practiced more in future classes. And this is the foundation to that work. Again, I've given you some tools or a tool for using AI responsibly. So here's another succinct version of that. Let me move my face out your way here. Another succinct version of how to use AI appropriately. Okay, hold on. Got all kind of buttons going everywhere. Sorry. I am all over the screen. Hang on. Where'd my PowerPoint go? Well, I apologize for the delay. Hang on. Well, it disappeared on me, guys. Hang on. Apologies. That was not fun. All right, let me go back to the end here. Okay. So I've given you that tool about using AI appropriately, which is kind of a visual self-check, and it's like almost like a flow chart. So I would definitely encourage you to use that. But this summarizes what you should be looking at and essentially tells you the things you can do and cannot do. So I'll give you a second to look at that. And I really hope you attend to this because you will see this more and more in all of your classes, professors attending to this. And so you really want to stay out of hot water by understanding the appropriate use of AI. And here's a little checklist for you. Again, that visual I gave you, I think is probably, to me, the better tool, but this is a summary and checklist that you can use, especially when you write your summaries for this week. So finally, practice, get feedback, ask for support where you need it, maybe phone a friend. My computer's going dead, by the way, if you haven't noticed. And here's just a summary of some other resources and just reinforcing you to practice. So let me move myself out of the way again so you can see that. And then here are just some things to consider. Again, sharing, having that learning community, supporting one another, asking me for questions, and merely be embracing feedback and being okay with not being perfect the first time. Using feedback, I think I put in one of my announcements, is the breakfast of champions. So you certainly want to make sure that you're receptive to feedback and you embrace it, because that's how you reflect and grow. And all great leaders receive feedback. Writing, that iterative process, which is iterative means you're writing, getting feedback, and then writing more, is very important to your professional growth in this area. Hopefully this helps you write a successful summary this week and avoid plagiarism. And in general, this may help you with discussion board posts, future papers, and avoiding any issues with plagiarism. Have a great afternoon. Bye.